If you're watching this video, you've probably been shopping around for an E46 M3 recently. I just want to share my experience with my car. I bought my car about a month ago. There's been a lot of things that surprised me about the E46 M3. I kind of want to share that with you guys. Hopefully my experience will kind of give you a better idea as to what to expect on owning one of these cars. I've driven a lot of different BMWs. I had an E92 335 before this that I'll be referencing in this video. So that's like a good benchmark. And then I've driven my boss's E92 M3. So that's another good reference. I've experienced that car quite a bit, driven it a lot. It's pretty modified. So yeah, I have good experience in BMWs. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but this is just my opinion as someone that likes to drive and enjoy these cars for what they are. The first thing I want to mention about this car is the comfort. In my experience, this car is not the most comfortable. You have to remember that it's an early 2000s car. They produced this obviously in the late 1990s, so it has older technology. The seats aren't like the most comfortable. The sound deadening isn't like anything close to like the newer cars that are out today. One of the things that I noticed when I first got the car is you feel absolutely everything through the steering wheel, which that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. That's actually great for performance driving, but when you want a comfortable car, you want a steering wheel that will obviously take the bumps on the road and not translate that. This definitely translates all the bumps, imperfections in the road, and you feel all that in the steering wheel, in the suspension, which I like because when you're driving this car on the limit, that's really important to have. The E46 provides a really connected feeling, so at all times I feel like very connected with the car. I always know where the tires are on the road and what the chassis is doing when I'm pushing this car, which is great to have. With cars becoming more electronic and kind of computerized, I feel like enthusiasts really want that feedback that you get from hydraulic steering and just stuff that has less electronics involved. This car provides really great feedback. Something like a F80 M3, that's pretty numbed down. I've driven an M3 and I've driven an M4, the F80 generation, and they definitely just feel very numb. Everything from the suspension feels good, but the steering feels super numb. And I drove one with the DCT, so you don't get that same control as you do with the manual transmission. With the E46, you have to work pretty hard to extract the performance out of this car. Keeping this car in the power band is actually kind of challenging. The gearing is a little bit too long in my opinion. A lot of people do like a 391 differential, or they do a 410 differential, which is something that I plan to do down the road for sure. It's just pretty expensive. Keeping this car in the power band is definitely hard because it makes peak power at the very top. It's not like obviously a turbocharged car that makes a lot of torque down low. So keeping this car up in the revs can be challenging at times, especially when you're driving around in a canyon. You have to carry a lot of speed in corners. It can be challenging at times, but it's part of the fun because when you get it right, it's very rewarding. One thing that I don't really like about this car is the Harman Kardon sound system. I think it sounds terrible. It doesn't have a lot of bass to it. The speakers are alright, but I think a couple of mine are blown anyways. But yeah, I had a 335 before this, and the Logic 7 sound system and that was amazing. It was the best sound system I've ever had in a car. The one in this definitely needs some work. Luckily there's options from companies like BAV Sound, so that's something I'll probably do in the future as well. I've also noticed that in this car I get a lot of compliments, whether that's just a thumbs up from another driver or another car guy, or like recently I was at the car wash and some guy with the M4, he was like talking about how the E46 is his favorite generation of car, which is so funny because a lot of people buy newer BMWs, but they don't want a car that's not comfortable or very usable, so they don't get an older car like the E46 and they opt for something like an F80. My car looks completely stock. It's lowered just a little bit, but it has stock wheels, no lip, no nothing. There's not even tint on it, and people are still complimenting it. So I'm assuming once I get this thing all set up with like bucket seats, a cage, new wheels, suspension, I'm sure I'll get a lot more compliments on it. In comparison to my 335, I almost never got compliments like that. That car is kind of considered more of a younger person's car, and you know, that one was loud, it was lowered, and it had like pretty dark tints on it, so I could see why people would think that's more of like a younger kid that's driving that car. this E46 definitely feels more mature, and people I think have more respect for people that own BMW M cars. I'm someone that doesn't really care too much about comfort and usability. Obviously this car is very usable. It's not like a race car or anything, but it's definitely not as usable as say an F80 M3 with a DCT in it. You know, my car is manual and it has a short shifter on it. It has a beefed up clutch, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to drive, but I've been daily driving it for over a month now and it feels pretty great. I care more about a car being able to take the beating that I kind of put it through. I like really pushing my cars and pretty much doing it on a daily basis. I want a car that I can push and then go back down to cruising speeds and then not have any overheating issues or brake fade or anything like that. The E46 just feels really well set up for performance driving, which every M car is like that, but a lot of the newer ones are just so big and so heavy and set up for comfort. So I think the older generation M cars are definitely the better ones. If you've been looking for a car that handles well, the E46 M3 is literally the perfect car for you. Coming from the E92 335, that car felt really soft and unbalanced, even with coilovers on it. I had SolarWorks coilovers, which aren't the stiffest coilovers, but it left a lot to be desired for sure. The E46 was definitely built for corners and performance driving. It doesn't have those luxury features that say a 335 would, so there's definitely a trade-off there. But for me, the luxury features are not as important as a car that can really perform well. Something I've already mentioned probably a couple times in this video, but the balance of an E46 M3 is so good. And surprisingly, I feel like it doesn't need more power. My car has headers, intake, and a tune, and it makes about, I believe it was 315 wheel. I'm not sure which dyno that was on. It was done by the previous owner, but I don't feel like it needs more power. A lot of people supercharge these cars, and I don't think it's really that necessary. I think it kind of ruins some of the drivability of it and daily usability, because with the supercharger you start to run into heat issues. It'll make the car run really hot. I think it's pretty great NA. I've been on this car really hard and the temperatures never change. It never goes over halfway on the oil temp or coolant temp, which is awesome because it just gives me that confidence knowing that I can continue to beat on this car over and over again and the cooling system can handle it. It might feel a little bit underpowered on a track, but that's something I'm gonna be testing sometime soon. I'm getting my car set up just a little bit more. I need better brakes, bucket seats, and then I think I'm gonna be taking this car on the track. One of my buddies, Fat, has been going with his Porsches. He has two different Caymans that he usually takes to the track. So I'll be going with him soon. I think Spencer wants to go as well with his M3. So look out for that video coming soon for sure. Overall, this car's really surprised me. Like I said, I've driven an E92 M3 that has a lot of mods on it, and I think this car comes really close in being very comparable to each other. I think for sure the E92 and the E46 generations are the best M3 generations basically ever made. A lot of people will tell you that. A lot of people think the E46 is best. A lot of people think the E92 is best. It's kind of just what you prefer. For how cheap you can get an E46 M3, I think it wins just because of that. I picked up my car for under $15,000. I'm not gonna say the exact price. Yeah, these cars are really cheap, whereas Spencer spent about $30,000 on his car. Obviously it's lower mileage and all that. The E92s are definitely more expensive. You do get more luxury features, like the sound system is really great, the interior is really nice, and that whole cabin just feels really great. For pure driver's enjoyment at this price range, I think the E46 M3 is literally the perfect car. There's definitely Porsches that are better to drive. Those Caymans and 911s, they're in a different price range. Even like the last generation Cayman, like a base one, I'm sure you could get it around $30,000, maybe $35,000, but still, that's completely different than kind of a lower end E46 M3. That being said, there is E46 M3s that are going for $40,000, you know, Laguna Seca blue cars. If you're just getting an M3 for the enjoyment of it, I think the color obviously does not matter. I think the rare colors should be kind of left for those collectors that don't want to drive them. I think the normal colored cars like carbon black, silver gray, silver, those are the ones that should be driven because they don't have the crazy high values as the Laguna Seca blue ones and Imola red, colors like that. If you've never driven an E46 M3, I definitely encourage you to, because basically there's like a cult following around E46 M3s. and I never understood it. I had no clue why people like these cars so much. Even my co-worker George, he loves these cars. He hadn't even driven one before I got this car, but he was just super obsessed with them. First time I drove one of these cars, I understood it. It makes sense. This car is so well balanced. The engine revs to the moon. If some of the things I've talked about kind of appeal to you, you should definitely go drive one. Go try them out. If your friend has one, ask if you can drive it. I feel like you can't really appreciate these cars until you really drive them and push them on like a canyon road or something, because that's where they really shine. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this little insight. I've owned this car only for about a month now. I'm not an expert at all, but I'll be continuing to make update videos on this car and my thoughts on it. It's had a decent amount of problems, but it is a higher mileage car. I already did the Vanos rebuild, and right now I'm kind of dealing with a vacuum leak. At idle, it kind of has issues. But overall, this car has been really great to me, and I can't wait to do more mods to it because it's only gonna get better. It has very basic mods right now, and it's insane. This car makes me so happy. Yeah, go try one out, and if you have experience with the E46 M3, definitely leave a comment down below, like this video, let me know what you think. If you guys haven't already, definitely subscribe to my channel. I'd appreciate it a lot. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.